Hey guys, James here again, and today we're going to be exploring something that I know, for the UK guys anyway, has been like the question that has popped up the most in all of my videos, posts, and Instagram pictures and etc. Every time I post anything with slugs, the first thing people are coming up with was, well, what about sub 12? Do they work sub 12? And the honest kind of answer from the start, at least, is I don't know. I literally have no idea. It's not something I've done. So we're going to explore that today. Now I've got my FX impact, and this is a sub 12 foot-pound impact, and I've got a 500mm smooth twist X barrel on there, and we're going to see what happens. So I've picked up, so just we know what's being used, 3 of what I would call the most common mainstream slugs that are on the market today. We've got the H&N ones, we have JSB Knockout, and then we have the FX hybrids. Now I have a lot of experience with these in my FAC gun. They are phenomenal in that gun. I don't know what they're going to do sub 12. Knockouts as well, I haven't used these at all. This is a fresh tin. These will be the ones that we try initially to get it to fire and then see what it does on paper. And then also the H&Ns. Now I've got, obviously they are in 2.2, but the H&N slugs, there are like a million options. So I'm going to take the closest to these two that I can. Okay, so slug number 1. Now these are the H&Ns. Now you can see these are sample pack here. And we have 21 grains up to 30 grains, and I've got them in both 217 and 218. So we'll go for the 218s, see what happens there. From experience with my FAC gun, the 218s seemed to work a little bit better, so we'll go for these. Slug number 2. Now these are a little bit heavier. These are 25.39 grains. These are the JSB Knockouts. Now I've got the most of these, so this will be this slug that we use just to see if it works, and then to put on paper. So this will be our starting slug. And then the most expensive slugs will be these. Now these are the FX hybrids. Now I've used these extensively through my FAC gun, and they work phenomenally. These are the only slugs really, apart from the H&Ns, that got me out that I've had experience with. This is a brand new tin. I don't know what they're going to do. To be fair, I don't know what they're going to do sub 12 anyway. But I don't have any experience with those. I have limited experience with these. I have a lot of experience with these. So anyway, less of me talking, let's get the impact lined up downrange, get my cleaning / deramming rod ready, and just see if these will actually exit the barrel, because that's my biggest concern for test number 1. Will it feed? Okay guys, so a little bit dark because obviously the light's a bit funky at the moment, but the first test, a little bit of a homage to one of my favourite shows, will it feed? So I've got the magazine put in the rifle here. I'm going to bring the bolt forward, hopefully the slug will chamber. I'll then be listening for an audible kind of something, a report of some sort, just to tell me it's hit something that away. We aren't zeroed in just yet, so this is purely a test of will it actually feed. So, without any further ado, let's give it a try. It will feed. Okay, so fast forward about 5 minutes for me, probably half a second for you. I've got it on paper at 35 yards. What we're going to attempt to do now is fire 5 shots. I'm usually an advocate for 10 shots, but we're going to try 5 shots on each. So we'll do 5 shots of the JSBs. We'll start off with those first, seeing as they're in the gun, and that's what we've just put it on paper with. We'll then move across to the H&Ns, and then we'll do the FX last. I've got 3 dots left on the target, so we'll go and have a look and see what the results are. So anyway, 5 shots, see what happens. Right guys, so we have it. It's 5 shots with the JSBs. We'll get loaded up with the next lot, and we'll go and have a look at the targets in 2 seconds. Okay, so these are going to be the halfway point. Now these are the H&N slugs. I've gone for the 23 grain version here. The last ones we looked at were 25, and then the FX one's 22. So I kind of want to get one in the middle just to see how they go. Now, depending on how the results go, I might revisit with a 25 and a 22, just see how they compare directly. But for the broad spectrum of off-the-shelf slugs that are available, this is bang in the middle. And typically, being H&N, as I'm looking through these slugs, the quality of the pellets here, or the slugs, is just sublime. It's really good. So anyway, 5 shots, let's see what they can do. really interesting results there. One of the shots is not on target. Two, I think, of the shots are like on each other, and then we got one an inch high, one an inch low. So I say, this could be massively down to the fact that this isn't really what these guns were ever kind of designed for. We're running sub 12, they need the twist and they need the power. So this could be what we're on to here. But anyway, we'll get these FX hybrids loaded up, see what they can do. The 22 grains should be flying a little bit quicker out of sub 12 because it's the least amount of lead being put out. Yeah, see what happens. So slug number 3, these are the 22 grain FX hybrids. Had massive success with these from my FAC gun. So let's see what they'll do sub 12. Okay, so interestingly, they were super low. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a quick fiddle with the scope, bring everything back up, and then we'll try this test again. Okay, so take 2 with the FX hybrids. These are 22 grains. Right, so that was 5 on the FX. I'm just going to shoot 5 more just out of curiosity with the JSBs. I just want to be absolutely certain of my first results. Then we'll move you into targets, show you what they're at. And I've also managed to find a couple of the pellets that have been embedded in the wood, so we'll be able to see what's gone on penetration-wise, expansion-wise, and exactly how they performed. So 5 more with the JSB, just so I can be absolutely certain, then we'll move into targets. Alright, so this was target number 1 for the JSBs. Now I'm going to use a 5p piece here just to show you, because that's what I usually shoot to. That's the kind of sizing we're looking at against a 5p. So you're probably from end to end on the group, probably about 1.25 inch-ish. Comparison to a 50p, it's one of the largest coins we got, just so you can see. Again, kind of covers all but one. Right, so quite a big group, but all on paper. Number 2 with the H&Ns, this is the 23 grain, again 5p piece, 50p. You can see the size of the grouping here from end to end, that's probably a good sort of 3.5, almost 4 inches. And again, the FX, and this was actually better, 2 grouped here, 2 grouped there, and then 1 just there. Again, 50p against the target. Again, it's a big old grouping. So by far the best performing with the JSBs. The second group I did as well. Bar 1, that was my fault, I pulled that, that's completely my own fault. But these ones here were all within about 1.5 inches, so that was consistent with this group here. So the JSBs by far coming out on top on this occasion. Right, so back into the world of normal lighting, no more shadows. Results. Now, you see all the groupings, that was that. But when I was looking at the palette that we had rested up against it, something I expected that we weren't going to be able to do today was to actually have a look at the expansion. So a lot of the slugs were actually caught in the wood. Now wood's pretty hard, it's also a little bit soft, if you kind of get what I mean. So it's got that perfect kind of hitting into it, but it's not like hitting a sheet of steel where it's just going to blur all the results. So in my head, at least for the moment, wood kind of gives us this happy medium. And the results, to be completely honest, were really good. Now, of all of the slugs that we have just tested, the JSBs had the least deformation on them at all. They stayed together pretty much as a whole, didn't really expand out too much, they just kind of mushroomed in on themselves and kept ploughing. I've only managed to find 2, all the rest have blown clean through the pallets. So they're obviously carrying a lot of energy, they're just not dissipating it into what they're hitting, they're just ploughing, which it's a good thing, it's a bad thing, we'll come back to that later. The H&Ns gave some really interesting results, they just squished on themselves and expanded into just a mess. I'll put macros up here so you can actually see them as well. So they deformed, grouped relatively okay. The FXs, now, that's insane. That is absolutely insane. They've literally just kind of expanded out on themselves. And yeah, I'm kind of impressed. They do a similar thing with FAC. I wasn't expecting them to do that with sub 12 because I didn't think they would have enough power to actually do that. So what can we take from the results? The JSBs grouped the best, but expanded the least. The FX grouped in the middle and expanded the most. And the H&Ns grouped questionable and again didn't expand a massive amount. So you're either going for massive expansion, risk of accuracy, good accuracy, well I say good, an inch of accuracy at 35 yards for no expansion. And that kind of leads me to my conclusion. So let's get on with that. So, final thoughts. Now I said at the start I had a preconception of how this was going to go and I had two scenarios in my head. One of them has come true. The first one, I'm pleased to say, didn't. So scenario one in my head was I was going to need to use my jamming rod to unblock the barrel because they're not going to get out. It's a big projectile having not a lot of air behind it, trying to do something. So in my head, I did wonder if it would actually make it out the barrel. I was pleasantly surprised when it did, which led me on to scenario two, which in my head at least, with knowing how rifling and trajectory and stuff like that works, was they were going to shoot, but the results would be questionable. Now I would argue that 1.5 inch upwards groups with a sub 12 foot-pound airgun are very questionable. I can shoot very well with pellets, I can shoot a damn sight better than that with FAC, but I think sub 12, the cons outweigh the positives. It's a big old lump of lead, and unlike a Diablo that's shaped with its convex behind, so if it's a little bit unstable, but if it's got speed behind it, it will straighten itself out unless it starts losing speed and it wobbles, which is what these slugs were designed to mitigate with FAC guns, because it's a bullet-shaped projectile. Now, if you look back at history, any bullet-shaped projectile, be it from a cannon down to small arms, needs rifling to get it spinning, and it needs power to get it really driving. Now, I wonder with the Smooth Twist X barrel if the rifling, because it's quite a gradual, isn't getting the spin rate that we need. And because we don't have the power, it's not got the power it needs to make the most out of the rifling, so it's not engaging properly and getting that stability. Not having that stability is what makes the groups open up. Now when you do this test with exactly the same barrel, this is the barrel out my crown, with slugs, the groups are like 5p pieces at 50 metres, at 100 metres they're at like 1/2 inch. The groups are phenomenal, so it's got nothing to do with the barrel. I think this is purely down to the fact that sub 12 and slugs just don't work. They work to a certain extent, but I think when you look at the advantages you gain from the negatives you pick up from moving from a Diablo pellet to a slug, when it comes to sub 12 at least, you may as well just stick with a normal pellet. You'll be able to go further, they will group better, they're cheaper. These are not cheap slugs to be using, you know, they are expensive. And I think that's, as I say, scenario 2 in my head, the results have proved it. Expansion wise, I wasn't expecting them to expand that much, so that's really cool to see. Grouping wise, it's kind of what I was expecting, to be fair. That was what it was. Now, as I say, this is part 1. I hadn't even expected to be able to retain any of these at all. So we will look into that in part 2. I'll get the chronograph out, we'll see what power they're doing. I'll find different mediums to shoot into as well. We'll try water, soap, and bits and pieces just to see if the results vary. As I say, this was with the 3 most common ones that I see on the shelf or on market: H&N, JSB, and FX. Now, all of these actually can be found on the Airgun 101 store, which is where this video will be found. Really cool project. I'm really liking to see that everybody's kind of getting behind it, and it's an amazing little hub for everything airguns. There's a forum on there. I don't frequent it as much as maybe I should, but with all of the social platforms and stuff that I already run, finding time enough for that and then forums is quite difficult. But I do make a point of going across there. There's a lot of really, really good information and some big names giving their 2 cents on the information as well. So until next time, guys, if you want to see the next video, hit subscribe. You'll get a little notification when we're next up. If you've got any comments, any questions, feel free to put them below and I'll try and get back to everybody as best as I can. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Take care.